What's up, everybody? I'm Chris Dailey, founder of the Sports Court, joined here by none other than the man himself, El Presidente of the USL, Jake Edwards. So, Jake, thank you so much for joining the show.
Chris, great to be on your show. My pleasure. Thanks for having us. Look forward to chatting all things football with you.
Yeah, same here. And as people can tell by your accent, you were born in England, but many may not know that you actually spent a lot of time in New Jersey from a young age. So, can you describe that culture shock from moving from England all the way to the Garden State, both on and off the pitch?
It was. Obviously, I don't sound like I'm from New Jersey, but I've spent many years there. I have lifelong friends and great experiences from my time there. My dad used to work in the airline industry in aviation, and he was an engineer for British Airways and Virgin Atlantic, and was stationed all around the world from various countries. When I grew up, we spent time not just in England, but in the Far East, as well as two stints in Africa. And then eventually his job took him to New Jersey. So we moved over as a family from England. I was living in the south of England at that time. I'd started playing football, not just with my town team, but I joined Brighton and Hove Albion. I was starting in their youth program. Had a lot of good friends, etc. And then we had this opportunity to move to the US. And so we did it. And we moved to New Jersey. My dad was working at Kennedy Airport. And settled into East Hanover and Florham Park in that area. I went to high school there and started playing soccer. And back then, that was 89, 90. It was a very, very different experience, you know. And suddenly all of my friends were called Anthony and Vinny, and all the girls were Maria. And it was a very Italian-American community. And loved the food, loved the culture, very different accent. Nobody could understand the word I was saying. I had to keep repeating myself all the time to everybody. But slowly and surely started to make friends, and football helped me do that. And I was a pretty good footballer at the time. And I started to get into some of the local clubs, played for Carney Thistle and Union Lancers and some of those clubs. So we started to play football all around sort of the tri-state area, and that's and as you said, football was that was the sport. You know, there was a lot of great players were coming out of those clubs at that time. People like Claudio Renia and John Harkes, who's in the USL coaching as well, and many good players came before. So it was a great experience over a few years to be playing there in New Jersey, and then, you know, eventually football took me away from the state, but I try to get back as much as I can.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned Carney and you mentioned Reyna and Harkes. It's crazy because 3 players, I believe, that were raised in Carney, not born there. Claudio was born, I think, in Uruguay, Argentina. So, but 3 players from Carney that grew up there all played in the World Cup, I believe 1990 or 1994. And speaking of that 1994 one, a lot of memories happened. You were a ball boy at that Ireland-Italy game. So what did you take away from that moment as a 17, 18-year-old kid watching the best in the world on your home turf?
Well, that was an amazing time for the sport. And when I was playing for Carney Thistle the year before the World Cup in '93, the New Jersey host committee supported our team to go on a tour to play in England. And so we went over and played the likes of Glasgow, Man City and Everton. We went north to Scotland, played the Glasgow Rangers and a few other teams. And then there was a series of events happening in the year before like that. And we did some other events in and around New Jersey in early '94. And then I ended up becoming part of the World Cup volunteer group. And so my role then was to be at the stadium. My group were in the locker room. We were making sure everything was in there for the 2 teams. We walked out with the teams who were on the pitch around the wall in the giant stadium, making sure, you know, we could get the footballs back or whatever was needed. And so I was lucky enough to be there for the Ireland-Italy game. And I remember, of course, it was an amazing game, and Italy won. Ireland won 1-0. Ray Houghton scored a fantastic volley, and the place was just sold out. It was deafening, and for me that was just eye-opening to see not just the quality on the field, but the passion and excitement in the stands, and people from all over the world that were coming into those games. So that was that. You know, as a young kid that wanted to get into football, aspire to be a professional player, to be around some of my heroes. on the field there, be that close you can touch them, and I get to talk to meet them after the game. It was an amazing experience. Yeah, really, that was it. Made my mind up. That's what I wanted to try and do.
Yes, it's amazing. And after doing that, you attended James Madison University, JMU. I'm sure you played William and Mary. My cousin plays there, women's soccer. So you had a great career there, and eventually you returned to England and you signed with Wrexham and went on loans at Blackpool and a really successful one at Telford. So what was it like for you as a 22-year-old kid to go back to your home country and play professional soccer?
It was a dream come true for me, Chris. I wanted to do that since I was 7, since I started playing football like every other kid in England. That's all you want to do is be a professional footballer. So for me, that was a dream come true. I had a good career at James Madison. We had a very good team in those days in the early 90s. But that was always my intention to try and go back and play. So when I went back and got a contract with Wrexham, I started my career there in the old second division. At that time, Manchester City were in the same division. Stoke City, Fulham, a number of the teams you see now in the Premier League who had moved up and down were in the same league. So it was a very competitive league to go into. I'd been away for quite a long time in the US and going through the youth system and then the collegiate system. Suddenly you step into the world of professional football where you have to make a mental transition from, you love playing, it's fun, to this is now a job. You are doing this full time, 10 and a half months plus your summer training, and you are in an environment where you have to win and you have to be competitive amongst your own teammates to get on the field, and then of course be competitive against the other teams. So suddenly it's very, very serious, and you've got guys that are gonna they take it very seriously, and the standards are high, and you've got to meet the standards. And if you don't, believe me, they let you know. So it was a bit of a shock to the intensity of playing in England. Your team's Wickham. It's one of my first goals I scored for Wrexham was away against Wickham, funnily enough. But
excuse me.
But I had a great affinity for North Wales and my time at Wrexham. It was a great club. It's since been bought by some Hollywood movie stars now, so we'll see what happens to it. Ryan Reynolds and his partner, but. And unfortunately, they've gone down in the leagues now. But that was great, yeah. And that was a good introduction for me. And I embarked then on about a 12-year playing career in England.
And I don't know if you played Wickham at Adams Park, which is now Lokes Park, but the what they played back in the day was slanted, and it would go down. I think it was like left to right. So it's really funny looking back at pictures of that. I can't imagine playing on that. I play on some pretty bad field of youth soccer myself, but that one for professional is really horrendous.
We have to try and score your goals in the first half because you're much faster when you're running downhill.
Yeah, yes, indeed. So you played in England for a bit, as we mentioned, but you came back to America and played in the USL for a quick bit. Little did you know that you were going to be the president of the league years later and take it to heights no one ever thought it would reach, as we just saw today with Queensboro announcing a soccer-specific stadium. So how rewarding is it for you to see how much the USL has changed since the time you were there? Playing, and do you have a special affection at all for the Charleston Battery?
I do, of course I do. I love the Battery. It's near and dear to my heart. I came over in 2002. It was, yeah, and I had a season with the Battery. Very good team then, some really good players, and it was quite a young club at that time. They were one of the first to build a soccer-specific stadium alongside Columbus Crew in the sort of mid-1990s, and so. It was quite a famous stadium. It used to be called Blackboard Stadium, and the national team played there. It was a really cool place, and they had this really cool pub on the side of the stadium with all this memorabilia that the owner had collected. It was really unique. And the assistant coach, Mike Anhauser, then is now the head coach, and so he's been there for well over 20 years and doing well. They've always been a good club, beautiful place to live. And so I've spent some time there recently with the new ownership group. They're building a new stadium. So I have fond memories of playing for Charleston. So yeah, it does have a soft spot in my heart. But the league was very different in those days, for sure. No, I had no idea that one day I'd be running the league and overseeing, all of this stuff. So it's brilliant to see where the league is now. I remember playing there, some of the horrendous road journeys, these crazy back-to-back games we used to play, and it was a very short season. So, but there were some very good players and good clubs in those days, as there are now. But I think the professionalism of the entire league, the quality of the stadiums and the clubs that are coming into the league now is very different to what it was then. But Charleston Battery is still playing, as are Richmond Kickers, and there's one or two teams like that who are some of the longest continual running professional teams in America. So it's a great story. I had the season there, and then I went back to England to carry on playing.
Yeah, the Battery have been going on for a while. I was just reading about them. I think they're the second or first longest running professional team. I know the Cosmos, obviously, they were big in the 70s. We talk about Giant Stadium being sold out. They sold out Giant Stadium. My dad had tickets to all those games, so he would go with my grandfather, and they always loved going to those games. And it's amazing American soccer to me because it comes in surges. The 1920s is when American soccer, you could say, was at its peak. We got third place at the World Cup in 1930, and then it eventually folded and because of the Great Depression, and then we didn't see it again until about 1950, where we beat England 1-0, 2-0, and then to the 70s, and now today. And this is the longest we've ever had it going, and the sustainability, thanks to you and everyone at the USL, it's just absolutely amazing. And you talk about not knowing you were ever going to be the president. So you eventually got into business at Solihull Moors after your playing career. Did you know at all that you wanted to get into the business side of the game?
I did later on, yeah. So when you're playing in your early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, as you go through that period of time, you're very focused on what you're doing. So you're not always thinking about what's next. Most players, that is. And so suddenly, before you know it, you're sort of then you're in your 30s and you've got only a few years left. I'd gone through the coaching courses. I was. That was a route, but it was just not a route that I was destined for, and I was getting a bit, I wanted a change of the routine. So in my last year in football, or my last 2 years, I should say, I started working as the commercial director for Solihull as I was still playing for them at the time. They were in between. They didn't have a commercial director at the time, so it was something I could step into. In previous seasons, I had actually spent time after training, because as a footballer, you do your training in the morning, you have your lunch, and then you're sort of free in the afternoon, right? So I would go out, I would come back, and I'd spend time with the marketing departments, the commercial departments, shadowing them, hanging out with them. What you're doing, Chris, just having a natural curiosity for the sport and the industry and the business side of it. And that's when I started to get quite interested in it. So yeah, I had this really crazy year where I was playing football for the team. I was also doing the commercial role, and with no real experience, just trying to working it out as I went. I did sell a few sponsorships, but and at the same time, then I needed to open some doors to the bigger world of the business side of sport. I needed a transition from playing into the commercial side. That's when I decided I wanted to do that. So how do you do that? It was very difficult from playing football for 12 years to suddenly jump into a different career, a different industry. And for me, the sort of to bridge that gap, I went back to university. I studied my master's in business administration, MBA, at a Warwick Business School, not far from where I lived. It was a good school. And in England, it's a full-time 1-year program. In the US, that's generally a 2-year program, but you could do it 1 year. So I had this crazy year where I was doing the MBA from sort of 9 to 5 in the classroom, and then I would train in the evening twice a week, and then I would also be doing the commercial work in the evening and playing on a Saturday. So it was like this just crazy year I got through. But the MBA did open some doors for me, and then shortly thereafter, I started working for a company called Octagon, which is a big US company, but it's a global sponsorship and marketing consultancy group. And I worked in their London office following the MBA for a few years, and that really opened my eyes to the commercial side of sport, because they did a lot of work in the Champions League, a lot of work for the World Cup and the Olympic Games and what have you. So seeing how those bigger partnerships work and those bigger deals work really got me, just opens your eyes to it. And I did some consultancy projects for them on starting up new leagues. In the Middle East, we started up a professional cricket league and a couple of other leagues. So I really got interested in that strategy of building a league. Had some success with it with Octagon. And that sort of led me to an opportunity then to join USL in 2012, who at the time were, it was sort of in the infancy really of the modern version of USL.
Yeah, and it's amazing, firstly, how much you multitask, playing soccer, getting your MBA, working too, just everything all together. And as you mentioned, finally going to Octagon and getting to the USL, what was your initial reaction as you heard the USL wants you on board and you were going to be a member of the league that you once played in?
Well, it was great. I mean, it was flattering and it was exciting and it was just sometimes in life timing comes together and you need a bit of luck, right? And so it all sort of came together. I was looking to move back from the UK back to the US at that time. I had a dear friend who was involved in Orlando City, which was playing in the USL at the time. He said, "You must come and meet Alec and his partner, but Alec, who owns the USL." And so I met in 2012, and back then it was there were 10 professional teams in the USL, and a lot of work to ahead of it. And so I spent some time with Alec. I really liked him, liked the vision, liked what he wanted to try and achieve. And we set about working that out. We said, all right, well, if you came on board, what would it look like? What's a 10-year roadmap to turn this league into something special? So I gave him a bit of a draft. We talked about it, and then he took a chance on me, offered me a job, and I came on board and really started in earnest in 2013.
You definitely made it special, and right at that time, Anthony Pulis, who I interviewed in the past, he was actually playing at Orlando, and now he's a coach, so it's amazing what Orlando's done themselves. And you mentioned the 10-year plan. Since being appointed VP, you worked your way up to president, and from soccer-specific stadiums in Queensboro, the Lynn Family Stadium, to developing players such as Tyler Adams, Alphonso Davies, who's one of the best in the world, and now the League One Academy and League Two. You've done quite a bit, Jake. My question for you is, what's next for the USL?
Well, you can't accept the status quo, right? Because you got to keep pushing and challenging yourself, trying to get bigger and better. So we've achieved a lot. If you told me when I joined in 2013 it would look like this in a 6-7 year period of time, I think we've achieved our initial 10-year strategic plan much quicker than I thought. When we look forward, what's next? Well, we've got a World Cup coming in 2026, so it's a huge opportunity to really grow the game, grow the sport as a whole, build up, relevant and well-supported local community-based soccer clubs. So what you touched on there is part of what's going to be next. So the Lynn Family Stadium, the Queensboro Stadium. So we've got to get our teams into the right environment. So we're currently building a lot of stadiums across the country. That will continue. You will see more of those size and scale stadiums in the USL Championship and League One. That's a big focus for us because that really impacts your desire to as a fan, go to the stadium and have a great experience. It helps the club from a sustainability point of view. We also want to really improve the quality on the field. Every year it gets better. We've got senior internationals playing in the USL. We've got fantastic up-and-coming players coming through the academy programs that you will see going on to Europe or in the future. So improving the quality on the field, and then a bit more expansion. Some newer clubs will be joining the USL over that time, and continue the work we're doing with our media partner and our commercial partners. But really, for me, it's important that if we fast forward 5 years from now, because we want to see lots of communities in the US that have their own professional team that they can go and support. Because, as you said, your dad and your granddad would go to watch the Cosmos play. You go, you've go and watch the Red Bulls play. Even though you want to go to Wickham and see a game in England and experience the international atmosphere as well, it's just important that you have your local team. And there's still a lot of communities in the US that don't have access to their own local team. So that's what we're working on, making sure we take professional football to as many communities as is possible and build the right stadiums and have the right well-supported clubs.
Yeah, and it's definitely amazing too, because a few years ago I knew about the USL only because I was so involved in talking about soccer and looking at soccer And a lot of my friends, they probably didn't. And now I talk to my friends about Forward Madison's new crazy jerseys and Phoenix Rising, what they did with the $1 beer nights. So just all that, it's just amazing what the USL has done in such a short span. And you're a big part of that, of course. And you did touch upon, and I touched upon as well, the USL Academy. You guys developed Tyler Adams, who's right around me. I met Tyler Adams, great guy. Alphonso Davies, who was in the FIFA Best 11 just last year. Many MLS and European players. Recently, the USL opened up the USL Academy. How does the USL Academy plan to develop even more Alphonso Davies, even more Tyler Adams, and continue to develop and nurture these world-class talents?
Well, it's sort of a stage process, and when you think about the USL Championship, USL League One, and USL League Two, we've got over 120 clubs across the US. Now, we've started an academy league that all of those clubs can participate in, and not all of them will do initially, but eventually they will. Now, you imagine that footprint across the US with all of those clubs in all of those towns and growing, and they've all got academy programs now. If we have the right facilities and if we have the right relationship with the youth clubs around those teams, and if we have the right coaches at those academies and the right pathway for those players to come in to the professional game locally, now they don't have to move across the country, now they've got an opportunity locally, we really can start to develop and nurture some of the fantastic young athletes and talented young soccer players in the country, and they're going to have access to a local professional team, and that will give them a pathway up. When they get to that professional team now, they're going to be playing against some fantastically experienced professional players, as well as senior internationals who are going to be also playing in the World Cup and the Gold Cup. And so they will help those young players come along. As the league itself becomes more competitive and gets more global exposure, the fact that these young players are now learning how to be professionals alongside some really quality senior players in a very quality league that is being watched now all over the world, the opportunity for those players to get picked up and move, whether it's to MLS or we've got sold a player to Glasgow Rangers, or players are on in Germany or England, etc. You're going to see more of those, and so for a club, the benefit is they can bring talent, develop it, and bring it into the first team. And it's always cheaper to do that than to go out and try and buy a left back or sign a left back on the open market if you can develop one. But then there's future value on those players down the road. So you'll see more of that. The Academy League launches next month, the end of May. These are 5-6 year programs, right? This is not an overnight thing. But you will see in time over the coming seasons, I believe, more of those kinds of stories. Not just players getting into the USL and succeeding on the professional level, but actually getting picked up by some big clubs overseas. There's a lot of talent in it. I always say, I think the next Lionel Messi may well come from New Jersey, or he might come out of Oklahoma City, or he could come out of Louisville. You just never know. As long as the pathway is there and all the roadblocks are taken out of the way, then we'll find those talented players like the two guys you mentioned.
And I won't be surprised. I interviewed Greg Berhalter, who's at the U.S. men's national team, and he's from Jersey. You're from Jersey. So many people from New Jersey. Tim Howard. List goes on and on. I'm joking. But it's amazing what the USL has done. As I mentioned,
Jersey is so influential on this sport.
Yeah. Yeah. So the USL, it's fun. It's super fun to watch. ESPN Plus, I'm so grateful. I subscribed to that a few years ago. My parents got that for me for my birthday. Definitely one of my best birthday gifts of all time. Now, the U.S. soccer has obviously a bunch of ups and downs. It's pretty much just a big roller coaster. And the USL has been one of the brightest stories in all of U.S. soccer in recent time. Now, I'm definitely very interested in soccer, and a lot of people are out there. It's one of the most participated youth sports, I think second behind basketball in America. What's your biggest advice for someone like me and all these kids out here who are interested in getting into the business side of soccer?
Oh, good. Well, we need more people to be involved in soccer at all levels, and I think having, first of all, having a local club is so important, and having that touch point with your local club. So everybody watches the Premier League and they watch leagues around the world. You watch the national team here, but I encourage everyone to engage in domestic soccer, USL, MLS, NWSL. Make sure you're following your local team. If you're, go there, watch, get to know the people. USL is very accessible. You can meet players, you can meet the executives, and just spend time there. If you're a player, you want to try and get involved in one of those academy programs if you can, and then everyone will find a different route to where you want to go. What you're doing now, Chris, is great. I think you just need to be bold. Don't. Nothing comes to you, right? Nothing comes to your doorstep. Nobody from professional soccer is just going to come and knock on your door and invite you in. You've got to go out there. You've got to be brave and put your face out there and go and meet people. And whether that's through career fairs, internships, job opportunities, volunteering. I volunteered during the World Cup. Got to meet a lot of people that way. The more activity you can do with your local team or anything that's around you, do volunteer, get involved. You will meet people, and people respond to enthusiasm and passion. And if you have that for the sport, people will pick up on it and they'll want you to be involved in that program. And whatever you start doing is not what you'll finish doing, right? You'll get in and you'll do something, and then it'll take you somewhere. But I think for me, it was always, I wanted to be in football. I wanted to play, and then I wanted to stay in the game and try to give back to the game for everything that it had given me. And so what I get to do is work alongside a phenomenal team at the USL. I've got brilliant executives. They're all passionate. They all love the sport. And every day they come to work trying to make it better. It's a privilege to work with all of them, as well as everyone at the club side. So, just be bold. Be proactive, get out there, volunteer, get involved in your local club, see what they're up to, see how you can help make a difference, and then take it from there.
Yeah, and I just thank you for doing this interview, because that's about all I have for you. And I thank you just as a person and everybody within the USL. It's probably the league I've interviewed the most people in. Jake Keegan, I've been in touch with him ever since. He's a great guy. He's at Madison now, was in Greenville. Recently won the USL League One. Marty Cordero at Union Omaha. The list just goes on. And what you're developing with the USL, it's really helping American soccer in ways. When I do journalism, one of my teachers who used to be a journalist, he says, don't ever say words can't describe it, but words can't really describe what you've done for American soccer. It's just truly incredible. So I really thank you, Jake, and you speak about local soccer. I have a local high school stadium NPSL team. Not sure if you're too familiar with NPSL. It's FC Monmouth, and FC Monmouth, 900 people probably show up, or 500 to 900, but it's a $1 slice of pizza. You get a free pizza box if you leave a bit late, because they're just trying to hand them out and not throw them out. Don't want to waste any pizza. So it's just amazing what soccer has done, and just especially from the past 10 years, it's just amazing the upward spiral U.S. soccer's going in.
Well, it's the greatest game in the world, and we all love it. And I'm glad you're supporting your local teams, and it's so important that you do that. As I said, it's a privilege to still work in the sport, and Chris, I've loved being on your show. I'll talk about football all day long. If there's anything I can do to help you, or we can do to help in any way, just reach out. But wishing you the best of luck, and keep doing what you're doing. It's exciting to see you growing your show and the kind of people you're getting on there. So keep doing what you're doing. Let us know if we can be of any help, and go keep supporting your local team.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jake, and just all the best, especially with COVID and everything going on. Just all the best. Hope you're staying healthy.